Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our February Capacity Builders series. We're going to go ahead and get started because we have a lot of interesting things for us to talk about today. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Just a few reminders. Today, our agenda, we're going to do some welcome and housekeeping as always. We're going to spotlight a district. We're going to go over some systems of support about SEL. We have a little bit of homework for everybody, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some funding updates. Additionally, if you guys could please, just a few reminders, I'll put it in the chat right now. Take a few minutes to register for this event by clicking on that link. And then also, if you would like to pull up the slides, there's the link to the slides, so you guys can go ahead and have those ready to go because we do have several interactive slides for you today. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Amy to help introduce our district spotlight today, Norwood Elementary. So Amy, go ahead.
Thanks, Caitlin. Today we are going to be spotlighting Norwood Elementary School that is in Peoria, Illinois. The principal of Norwood is Dustin Bavard, and he is here to talk a little bit about the work that his teachers are doing in regards to capacity builders. So Dustin, I'll go ahead and pass it off to you.
Thank you, Amy. Glad to be here with everybody this morning. This is my first year at Norwood, and so this is a transition year for me in terms of moving to a new school district and looking at where our district is in terms of the initiatives that we need to take on moving forward. And one of the things that I noticed first and foremost was that we really would benefit greatly from some time spent with our ROE, and we wanted to partner with the Regional Office of Education to do a few things. But mostly what we wanted to do was be able to bring our ELA department together and analyze standards, taking standards walk, analyzing the need for vertical scaffolding, the need for common assessments. And there are so many things going on in our building. Probably one of the greatest benefits that I've been able to enjoy this year is having Amy Smith coming into the building and working with us on putting all that together. It's a big on-taking. And so to have Amy kind of in my, I don't want to say in my back pocket, but to have her available is enormous. And we're just starting to get that work underway. We're also working and utilizing the Regional Office of Education's new SEL Hub program. And we've been working with Michelle Coconati on that and piecing those components together. But one thing and I know I kind of alluded to this already, but as a principal coming in and seeing all of the things that we need to do and all of the initiatives we need to undertake, all I can really say at the end of the day is having the ROE with us to walk beside us through that is enormous. There's just too many things for one principal in a small district to manage by themselves sometimes. And to be able to push some of that off with our ROE and trust that it's going to be managed and handled and it's going to be a huge benefit to our students and our staff. I can't say enough about it. And so those are the things we're working on here. And those are things we're going to continue to work on. And we're going to continue to partner with our regional office and Amy Smith. And she probably gets tired of meeting with me. We meet a lot about different things. So we keep in communication and we work together side by side. And it's been a great partnership, both for the school and hopefully for the ROE as well.
Well, thank you, Dustin. I appreciate you taking the time to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing, and we will see you, I think, for this week as well. So we'll see you very soon.
Sounds good.
Again, thank you, Dustin, for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Y'all do the same. Take care.
I love hearing about all of those wonderful partnerships that we have across the state. We are on the forefront, we're the boots on the ground for this work. And so that is really the impetus for our capacity builder sessions that we have every month. And so thank you again, everyone, for being here today. We are focused today on the conversation of social emotional learning. And so we're really going to be flipping the script and putting a lot of that cognitive load on all of you today to be reflective, to do some thinking, to do some collaborating with one another. And so in preparation for today, we've come up with some essential questions to guide our work and conversations. So as we move through our morning together, we're going to be taking a look and having some conversations related to what is social emotional learning. Why are social emotional learning and trauma-informed practices essential for school communities? How can social emotional wellness be integrated into everyday learning in the classroom? We know that social emotional learning is part of our culture. It's not just a program, sneak preview. And then finally, we're going to take a look at how can we take a systems level view of social emotional learning to promote healthy school cultures. So buckle in and we'll get started with our morning.
Hey, so hopefully everyone has seen the links in the chat box. And as mentioned in the chat box, you're going to want to download the PowerPoint because we are going to ask for some embedded work into that slideshow. So we're going to start off with the first essential question is, what is social emotional learning? And the following slide, as you see on the screen, is a place for us to put in our answers. And so we're going to take just a few minutes as everyone gets the slideshow up and can answer these two questions. What is social emotional learning and what is not social emotional learning? So we'll watch as the slides are filled. And a thank you shout goes out to everyone as we watch those answers start pouring in. Thank you. Okay, and so as we kind of look at this slide, it looks as, you know, a common answer for SEL is a support for students. And I believe in one of the boxes, maybe there wasn't enough room, but it's a support for both students and parents, as well as teachers possibly. It is more than just strategies. I love it's essential. Also, we see that somebody wrote that it is embedded in the classroom. And on the other side, I love to see that somebody mentioned that SEL is not a quick fix, and nor is it a boxed curriculum. And so those are all things that we're going to cover as we move through our presentation. Thank you so much. This is a great overview of what SEL is and is not. Thank you for participating. As we look to the next slide, we know that SEL is the process whereby children and adults develop essential social and emotional competencies too, and then the competencies are listed following that. We know that SEL is the process through which children and adults enhance their ability to integrate thinking, feeling, and behaving to achieve important life tasks. And it's these 5 competencies that provide the foundation for positive health practices, engaged citizenship, academic achievement, and the lifelong learning for our students. As mentioned in that slide by one of our participants, SEL is not just a curriculum program that occurs during a scheduled time of day. As you note, the little icon here of the clock, research states that SEL is most effective when it is embedded throughout the school day. And as you can see, that clock represents the entire school day. Just last month, our presentation on the on the social studies standards and the Teach Act is just one example where opportunities to embed SEL into our content lies. I'm going to turn it over to Jordan now.
I think one of the things that's really essential in this conversation is that we are aware of not just what social emotional learning is, but also why we're even having this conversation in the first place. That's kind of going back to one of our essential questions, why is social emotional learning important in our communities? There's been a 30% increase of children's hospital visits due to adverse mental health crises in the past few years, and a 51% increase from 2016 to 21 in ER visits of children due to suicidal thoughts. 84% of schools agree that student behavior was negatively impacted by the pandemic, and folks in the classroom can see that, right? As a former educator, I saw the way that the pandemic was impacting our students every single day. And I think that this is the most stunning statistic, is that 47,000 students, according to Safe to Tell, reported attempting suicide in 2015. Right? It's like a staggering number of students. And I think that was really visceral and really difficult for me to read as a teacher that had seen the impact that negative emotional and mental health can have on our students, right? These are our kids. And so I think that it's really important for us to be able to be aware and acknowledge the social and emotional challenges that we're facing today due to a lot of different things, right? In our communities, we need to recognize the challenges that are facing our students and ourselves. The other thing that we have to recognize is this conversation can often be really challenging due to terminology. And so I think it's important on this next slide for us to recognize that though we may have different terminology, often we're talking about similar or even the same things. Fordham Institute did a study on over 1,000 parents across the US and the terminology that we use whenever it comes to social emotional learning. And the chart on the left side talks about heavily supported terminology, right? So life skills is one of the top choices for terminology for this work, right? So is social, emotional, and academic learning. However, social, emotional, and soft skills are often seen in a negative light, right, by a lot of parents. Even though when you look at the right side, the percentage of parents responding to schools that we should teach setting goals and working towards achieving them, that we should approach challenges in a positive and optimistic way, that students should believe in themselves and their abilities, and that they need to know how to navigate social situations. All of those are in the broad umbrella of social emotional learning. And I think it's really important as we walk further into this conversation to A, have an open mind, and B, to recognize that social emotional learning looks a lot of different ways, right? And there are some core principles that we need to be able to follow in order for us to be able to align our thinking and the way that we're speaking about these things, and also align it to make sure that it's as effective as possible. I'm going to hand it over to Amy to talk a little bit more about the research that goes behind SEL.
Thanks, Jordan. Yes, the evidence is clear and it's echoed across multiple studies and independent meta-analysis that there's many different benefits of SEL. We know from a large body of research on SEL that high quality programming leads to many things, including improved academic outcomes, long-term and global benefits, financial investments that are wise, as well as improvement on lifetime outcomes. For more information on these research studies, you can go ahead and click on the link from Castle, and they have a deeper dive into each of these different sections. And so if you're interested in learning more about the benefits of SEL through the research, I encourage you to reach out and click on that link and provide you with more information regarding what that happens to look like. To dive a little bit deeper into one of the research studies, this slide shows a longitudinal impact of SEL programming. This is a 2017 meta-analysis that included 82 studies. They showed the longitudinal effects, and the results show that there's gains that are lasting when you implement SEL into a school. SEL program isn't just a one-stop shop. There's benefits that are long-term. And you can see here on this slide, again, the source is Castle, and I encourage you to go ahead and look at the research moving forward. All right, and Jordan, it's back to you.
Yeah, Amy, we had to get into the video. No, so now we're gonna get the opportunity to, think. We've been thinking on a really broad brush kind of stroke understanding of what SEL can look like. I think it's really important that we are also grounded to know what it can practically look like from person to person, what it can look like when it's implemented well. Now that we have a firmer understanding of what SEL is and why it's so important, let's take a look at this video of one Nashville school that embedded SEL into essentially every part of their school, from students to teachers. Go for it, Caitlin.
Come on, Kevin, stay in there. Stay in the fight, Kevin.
My name is Matthias McNeil, Coach McNeil to most people. I'm the physical education teacher here at Valor High School.
Go hands up, everybody.
6'7", 300 plus pounds. I'm an opposing figure no matter where I go. Me being a representative of Black men, there are some stereotypes that go along with that. Maybe that I can't articulate emotions, or maybe that I don't know what emotions are, or I'm not able to affirm someone else, or maybe I can't even affirm kids. And so for me, I have to peel back these layers of questions before they actually get to know who I really am.
Thanks for coming to Circle. This is our chance to come together and check in on relationships.
My first time in Circle, it was a little new, weird if I could say that. But there was a nugget. I guess there was a seed planted that subconsciously started to shape how I taught and how I interacted. And they shaped how I communicated. It shaped even who I was outside of these Valor walls. I think where you may be feeling that you are weak, you're actually showing strength. The commitment I'm making to you is, I'm just gonna be here. I wanna be present.
I appreciate you.
Circle allows individuals like myself to get to a point to where I don't have to live out a stereotype. It allows me to just be a person.
I think the most striking line in that video is the last one. Coach McNeil saying, this SEL program, it allowed for me to feel like I could just be a person, right? To fight against the racial and relational stereotypes that he felt like he had been dealing with for so long, and how powerful that can be for our students, right? So I'd love for us to be able to think about how social emotional learning can be embedded into our classrooms, into instruction, into the work that we are doing together as communities, recognizing the importance of the moment that we're living in and the challenges that we're facing. And there are some really important questions that we need to be asking when we're thinking about what this needs to look like, how it needs to look, and how to build schools and communities and districts that do this really important work. Here are some questions that you can be thinking about whenever it comes to embedding, right? How often does your SEL program take? What are the resources that you have dedicated to SEL? Are your staff trained? How are you measuring its effectiveness? What SEL policies and components are relevant daily? How are your students empowered to express themselves? And is your SEL evidence-based and driving to specific objectives in the Illinois standards, right? These are big and often difficult questions, especially for those of us that are newer to SEL and that are supporting our districts in new ways. But these are really great questions to be able to ask ourselves. And so I want to give us time to be able to do just that, right? To ask ourselves these questions and to do so with each other. So we're going to dive into breakout rooms for 15 to 20-ish minutes. We're going to go in 4 groups, and we're going to be asking ourselves those embedding questions, right? What does SEL need to look like in our schools and in our district? And how can we embed this SEL work throughout all of our work? So be asking yourself these questions, be taking notes on the slides, and we will head into breakout rooms in just a moment. So I just want to bring us back. I think that there were a lot of really robust conversations, and I really appreciated people being able to share out, okay, what even does it look like across the different schools that we're supporting or the different districts. I think one of the things that I want to name really specifically that I'm hearing and also seeing is just the diversity of what SEL looks like across all of our different schools, districts, and ROEs. There's a huge diversity. Some folks are not doing much at all. Some folks are doing a lot and have been doing a lot, shows some effectiveness, some not. And, some folks are really heavily into it, but it looks vastly different from school to school. I think one thing that we need to name is that, social emotional learning is obviously incredibly important, but when there aren't measures and alignment in effect, that can be really challenging. And so I want to bring us to slide 16 that Amy's going to share a little bit about what it can look like for us to be aligned, especially to the standards, and start thinking about how can I align this across the different schools, groups, communities that I'm working with.
Thanks, Jordan. Yes, in our November needs assessment that we sent out during our capacity builders meeting, it really came back that one of the things that was a need within our area here in Illinois was talking about SEL and thinking about how to embed that into instruction. And so just like what Jordan had said, first we have to make sure that things are aligned. And so we're just going to provide some examples coming up of what this happens to look like. We're going to be providing some resources. And then I'm going to be offering you some thoughts about how this might look like moving forward when we utilize and think about what Casey's actually doing up within her ROE. So this slide right here is looking at aligning standards into practice. So we start with the core content learning standards, obviously, but then we have to think a little bit about SEL and what that link might be. And so if we look here, this is just the health priority learning standards. We can look at identify positive verbal, nonverbal communication skills as it goes into late elementary, middle school, early high school, and then late high school. But then also thinking about teaching practices that support SEL within the classroom. And you can see here on the slide, it deals with cooperative learning, students working together towards collective goals and accomplishing an instructional task, as well as with classroom discussions. And when you think about the standards that have been highlighted, definitely there's opportunity to bring in SEL teaching practices through those classroom discussions. And this is from the AIR, which I saw that somebody on the group breakouts had put this as a resource. It's the American Institute Research Toolkit. And it it really highlights 4 social learning practices and 6 instructional practices. And it's linked down below on the slide deck that you can go ahead and utilize and think about and look at when you're thinking about teaching practices that support SEL and then aligning those to your practice. There's another resource on slide 17 that is with Castle, and this is there's another resource where there's already SEL focuses embedded into lesson plans. And you can see here on this example that writing with our census through elementary, that the SEL focus is already outlined and it is incorporated. So there are already resources out there for districts to utilize and classroom teachers. And we wanted to make sure that you had this as a resource to provide to your districts as well. An example that Casey is currently doing is through her curriculum leadership cadre or network that she has. And what she's doing is she is doing a book study, Making Curriculum Matter by Laylor. And it is the curriculum leadership that meets and they are diving into this book. And the question that's driving this book study is, how do we as leaders facilitate the design of a standards-aligned curriculum that prioritizes SEL, civic engagement, and equity? And so this is a resource or something for you to consider regarding capacity builders, that this might be a book, or you might want to utilize a book study to have some of these conversations with those that are in districts within your area. Casey said, if you have any specific questions regarding her book study, please don't hesitate to reach out to her. She's more than willing to answer any questions that you have regarding the book or the book study and what that happens to look like. Another example of what Casey happens to be doing is school-based. And so this is, she does a lot of work through her SEL hub, and what she's working with the school on is embedding SEL learning standards at all grade levels into existing curriculum. And so the school identified a need to focus on whole school trauma programming based on the results of the TRSIA. And so they made an action plan and the goals are there, and you can see that they are really focusing on the school of that collaborative support part of the SEL hub. Again, Casey said, if you have any questions or you want to know a little bit more about what this happens to look like at the school, please reach out to her and she'll answer any questions that you happen to have. All right, and I think I hand it back off to Jordan.
With those things in mind, I think it's really important for us to think about what these practical examples can look like in aligning our work. And so slide 20 is filled with a number of different resources that we can take a look at if we are thinking about, okay, what resource are we utilizing now? If we're not utilizing resource, what resource should we be utilizing? And how can I make sure that my resource is research backed? Right? So these are great examples of a number of different SEL frameworks, organizations, and resources that people can be utilizing. And with those things in mind, now we have to ask ourselves the question, how can we take a systems level view of SEL to promote healthy school cultures? I know that the group that I was in previously, group 3, was starting to talk about that, taking a systems level approach of SEL in order for us to really reckon with, okay, how do we align this work, measure its effectiveness, and make sure that we're really supporting this and aligning across every person that we possibly can. We're going to go back into groups and continue the discussions that we were talking about before, now with a lens of knowing what it can look like, how it aligns to standards, and a number of different resources that we can take advantage of. So I'm going to send us back to groups. We'll be there for another 15 to 20 minutes. That you mute yourself as you come back into the room. I just really want to thank everybody for really robust conversations and for people really being able to say, okay, I think these are things that I think are deeply important, right? What does it look like for cultural buy-in? What does it look like for collaboration? What does it look like for us to align across these different schools and districts. This is, just like I was saying back in the group that I was a part of, this is the collaborative work that starts a lot of the effectiveness, right? So I want us to be able to think about SEL in a systems level approach. And we can jump to slides 23. I'm going to give it to Angie to talk a little bit about what SEL can look like systemically, and thinking about all of our tiers of support, and where SEL aligns with our tiers of support.
Thanks, Jordan. And I just want to echo your sentiments. I saw a lot of great thinking on slide 22. I saw references to culture, to sustainability, to common language, data through maybe some of our TRSIA work or some other data that we have available to us within the system, including 5 essentials. I saw mention of time. Time and schedules is a really important piece of that systems level thinking, as well as teams. So I want to put something to all of you. These are really great ideas, but I want to challenge us in our thinking and say that having strategies is not enough, right? We need strategic thinking, and strategic thinking, especially in regards to systems, to make change that is systemic and sustainable, and is creating a really healthy and positive school culture for all of our, not only our students, but also our families, our educators, our administrators, and our entire school communities. So as we look at slide 23, we're coming back to this. This should be a slide that's familiar to everyone. It's one of my favorites. So this is the MTSS placemat. And again, I want to offer a disclaimer that MTSS is not a rebrand of RTI. MTSS is zooming out and taking a look at what systems we have in place within our educational communities and how those systems integrate and function in order to create a cohesive system, a healthy system, a culture where everyone is able to learn and grow and thrive. So the green boxes that you see on this slide are areas that we've kind of touched upon today, or we've touched upon in our past several sessions with one another. Certainly today we've talked about behavior and social emotional needs. In the past, we've talked about partnerships and cultures, but I want to take us back to, you saw a slide earlier where Casey provided a sample for us related to whole school trauma programming. So if we just take that one conversation and that one goal with one district, what are all the implications that we have in regards to strategic systems thinking that is really intentional? Well, obviously, it is so important that we have all of those instructional components that you see up at the top. But really, you'll notice that the bigger chunks of the conversation and work are down below. So we need to be thinking about leadership, how we're supporting our educators. We need to think about our organizational structures and our culture. We need to think about those family and community partnerships, as well as some of our policy related structures. So when we're thinking about whole school trauma programming, for example, we need to consider what is our vision for that? And is it a shared vision that is pervasive across the building and across the district? How are we using data to drive those conversations? Are there opportunities for multiple voices to be at the table to develop that vision and to further that vision? Do we have teams in place that are going to be charged with soliciting feedback and sharing that vision across the stakeholder groups? When we think about those organizational structures and cultural pieces, what are our challenges? Who has accessibility to that vision and that goal of whole school trauma programming and the strategies that we've developed to support that? Who doesn't have access? Are all staff at the table, and are all staff planned and accounted for? Because if we're going to make this part of our culture, we know that it can't just be living with our counselors or our teachers or our administrators. We need to engage our bus drivers, our secretaries, our cafeteria workers, our paraeducators. So how are we intentionally planning for that? How are we integrating culturally responsive practices into our work and conversation with one another? If we're thinking about that family and community engagement piece, maybe some questions we're asking ourselves are, what is that homeschool connection? How do parents view their engagement with the school? What tools do they need in order to best support their children and partner with us in that lifelong education? How are we allowing them to provide feedback as opposed to having just one way and one direction of communication? Are we leveraging, in the spirit of looking at whole school trauma programming, are we appropriately leveraging our community partnerships? Do we have an open door communication with them? Are they at the table? Are they able to provide services that perhaps are outside of our scope within the district? And then finally, if we're looking at that policy piece, are we, when we think about that goal of whole school trauma programming, are we using evidence-based practices? What professional learning are we providing for all staff within the district? Do we have district level leadership teams to synthesize that vision and bring the entire district along? And how are we leveraging communication structures to make sure that everyone is apprised of what we're doing? In that policy realm, it is so important for us to be thinking about our educators as well. So how are we supporting them with conversations related to secondary trauma and compassion fatigue? When we look at our collective bargaining agreements, do we have articulated in their mental health services for teachers? How are we reviewing our current policies to make sure that they are trauma informed? So as you can see, that one piece, that one conversation, that one goal about whole school trauma programming has multiple fingers and has a significant implication for effectiveness of implementation and sustainability within our school culture. And so these are things that we need to be prepared to ask about, to bring to the table as we work with each of our administrators and educators across the state of Illinois to make this something that is impactful and sustainable. So now we're going to challenge you to actualize what you've heard today. So in just a moment, if you will join me on slide 25, we're going to create a waterfall moment. Now we did this last month and it was really incredibly cool to see. So we're going to ask you to kind of delay gratification on pushing the enter button using your chat feature, but down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you do have your chat button. So if you want to open that up, we're asking you, what could you create using today's learning as you think about your initial district needs assessment that perhaps you created in the fall, or maybe that you are still implementing with some of your schools and districts even after the new year. So take a moment, do not push the enter button as yet. I will tell you when, but just take a moment to reflect on how you can use the resources shared today to further some of those goals within your schools and districts that you serve. So I'll give you just a moment to do that. And then when I say go, and only when I say go, we'll hit that enter button together. All right, I'll give you like another 15 seconds here. All right, ready, set, go. Let's watch that waterfall. Oh, that's great. See lots of feedback in here about sharing this information with teachers. The importance of changing school district culture, using the TRSIA, making sure that we're including all of our staff members in these conversations. Language. Oh, Victoria, that's a good one. Community circles. Thank you so much for all of your feedback. We certainly appreciate it. And, you know, that's part of the power of this group, is that everyone has such wonderful ideas, and the ability for us to come together and share those regularly on a monthly basis is so important. So thank you so much for all of that feedback. I do want to put out a teaser trailer that we will be coming back to this idea of systems level thinking, multi-tiered systems of support next month, because we know that that is certainly important in our work with all of our stakeholders. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and actually, I think I'm turning it over to Caitlin or Amy. Amy, you have the homework piece.
Yeah, just homework. Please continue to complete and submit your professional learning plans for approvals to Chrissy, and her email contact information is here. And Caitlin has some more information regarding reimbursement that she'll share with you next.
Yes, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I know when we first started back in September, we initially had caps on all the ROEs that we could only spend $11,200 for reimbursement. Chrissy and I have talked a little bit, and we've decided to go ahead and open this up. So if you are in an area where you have lots of districts who are knocking on your door, but you are saying, I've already spent my reimbursement funds, we've now opened it up. So you are allowed to spend above the $11,200, with the caveat that we will be reimbursing on a first come, first served basis. So if you have not submitted your community of practice professional learning plan to Chrissy, you're going to want to get that in as soon as possible, so we have those funds accounted for and we know what type of reimbursement we're looking at. We're trying to spend as much of this money as we can so we don't have to send anything back to the state. So get those additional plans in and send them to Chrissy, and then we'll approve them as a team and you guys can get started. With that being said, if
can I ask a question about that, please?
yes, please do.
Victoria Norton, Martinsville. So I want to make sure that I understand. We were all guaranteed the 11,200. So that is our minimum. So we've perhaps either made the plans to spend that, so we know we'll eventually get all the receipts turned in to get that. And then I understand we could go above that number if we can get it spent and send in our expenditures. That's been my problem. We're using most of the money for professional development stipends because staff are doing so many PD sessions this year above and beyond like required ones. And so since they're doing it on their own times, or they're doing it during their lunch times, I'm providing like lunch and learn stipends, since you can't force anybody to work, during their breaks. So we plan on using on stipends, but those haven't been paid out yet. Therefore, I can't submit them yet, if that makes sense. So I just want to make sure that the 11,200 is guaranteed, and then there'll be possibly more money that we could submit past that.
Yes, that is absolutely correct, Victoria.
Thank you.
Yep. I'll pause there if there's any other questions for anyone who wants to jump in right now. The reimbursement process is exactly the same as it has been. So you just have to, from the beginning, we had that needs assessment template that we shared with you guys that we wanted you to share with your districts or within your region to your districts. Once your districts or schools completed that, that would help guide your PD plan creation. We did not want to see the needs assessment information, but we did want to see your PD plan for the communities of practice. Those are what gets sent to Chrissy along with the expense reporting files, and then you guys can get reimbursed that way. So I'll stop talking, and if anybody has any other questions, please speak up now, because I'm sure some other people have the same question.
I have a quick question. April at North Cook. We have we've been trying to secure courageous conversations training for our districts, and it's very, very, very expensive. So I'm wondering if I could use, I think Erica Tiemann mentioned the potential to maybe use some of the funds here to support that, but we are charging districts to come and attend so we can pay for the training. And I don't know if maybe I could talk to you afterwards, or I'm just not sure if it's an appropriate use of funds or how I could do that if I'm also charging people to pay again, because it is so expensive.
Yep, you can stay on and talk through it. Some initial ideas that come to mind is maybe you could just use some of this PD funds or the reimbursement funds for maybe purchasing the books, not necessarily the speaker. So I know those are expensive. And then if you wanted to purchase other things, so that could be reimbursable, such as traveling for teachers or for your staff to help facilitate these communities of practice, those are all reimbursable. But if you want to stay on, we can kind of talk through a couple other options.
All right, thanks. I'd love that.
Thank you. Okay, and if you have a specific question and want to hang on the line, please feel free to. Our next meeting is going to be March 6th. Remember, we do not have a meeting set for April just because of the spring breaks and everybody's off a different week. So we have our next one March 6th, and then our final one will be May 21st. And then we're planning to hold some office hours on June 5th if you have reimbursement questions. So with that, we'll go ahead and let you guys go a little bit early.
I do